Welcome to the next episode of The Resigning Show. And today I'm going to be talking about emotional well-being and also cognition development. All right. Did you know that your emotional well-being and your emotional security has a huge part to play in your cognitive development? I didn't know. I don't know if you do, but I didn't know. And I was watching Gaber Maté video this morning, and I will put the link to his video in the comments below, so you can also check out the original video. But it's just some of the things that I picked up, and I just want to kind of summarize it for us. So he says, or rather, if you know Gaber Maté work, he's a physician who's now championing, a more holistic development method practice of therapy called compassionate inquiry for psychotherapy. And if you just kind of Google his name or just Google his YouTube videos, you will see that he actually talks a lot about trauma and how having a trauma-informed mindset or the knowledge of it help us a lot in understanding who we are, what we do, how it affects it all. All right. I just gotta move back from my head. All right. So just to kind of summarize what he said over here. So in this talk that he prioritized emotional security of children, because in his work, he found that these kind of emotional insecurity then lead to many diseases, I'm putting inverted commas, example, ADHD, depression, and even cancer. And also it leads to patterns of behavior that we may come across as adults, such as acting out or tuning out, having a sense of dissociation from each other in adult relationship, like shutting down. Yes, there is the argument that, it could be an introvert and an extrovert thing. That is still, I'm still going to look into that and share with us what I found out. But just for the sake of the argument now, let's go with it. It also goes in terms of memory problems, such as, how much you can retain in your memory and how well this. Yes, there are the methods that help with memory. But anyway, again, for the sake of the argument, let's just go with it. So he in his talk, he said that emotional security is important for learning, for cognitive development and functioning. And in his studies that he has come across and medical journals that he's read, stress from parents passed down to children, right? And we're not talking, and he's not talking about genetic problem. Because for him, genes gets turned on or off depending on the environment that you are in. So in the study that was found, during the post 9/11, they were doing a study and of 1-year-olds, who were, like, for like a better word, who were behaving, certain ways. And he noticed, that there's certain behaviors already showing in 1-year-olds. And he corresponds that to his studies of his patients that he has later on. And then it kind of made me then think about who I am, because like I said in my last video, since moving out, a lot of things it felt like I've been uprooted and been in a new environment, and new environments bring out the best and worst, I realize, in me. So yes, I managed to get through 8 months of living here, but the 8 months that I've been here has not been easy for me. I actually fell sick on the first month that I was here, which is in September. I had some kind of food poisoning, so I had diarrhea, and then I was throwing up at night. And I thought, okay, maybe perhaps it's the food that was there. Okay, so perhaps it is the food. But then when that has subsided, I was still kind of having this lingering feeling in me, where I didn't feel too well. And because I just left home and it's been 2 months, so I thought, okay, maybe it is homesick. Homesickness is real. And I Googled up and I read it. It is real. It does create some kind of physiological and visceral reaction in the body. I said, okay, that's fine. And then in late October, I fell sick again with something. I can't remember what it is. And I was like, okay, this is not ideal. Like I can't be falling sick every month. And it was also the month where my visa was being sent for approval. So I guess it was that, to stress it out. And then in November, when my housemate parent, his mom came, and we went to a place, and then we went to eat. And when we came back, all of us fell ill, like seriously ill, in the sense that we were all throwing up in the middle of the night. We had diarrhea in the middle of the night. And the thing is, because we woke up at different times, we didn't know that we have it until the next morning when we saw each other. We're like, okay, how was your sleep? And then we didn't say it was not quite. And that was when we know, okay, something's not quite right over here. And that took a couple of weeks to get better, because we finally managed to diagnose what it is. And then it took a couple more weeks for it to get better. So basically for the month of November to December, I was feeling sick. And then I was also noticing my patterns of behavior. I wanted to quit. I thought it was not worth living anymore. I wanted to leave everything here and go back. My relationship with myself was quite hostile. My relationship with the people around me was also quite hostile. Now I was snappy, I was agitated, and I had to check myself. I had to, okay, I am feeling all these things, but it doesn't mean that I have the right to just lash it out on everybody. It's not right. So I was like, okay, something is going on. Something is coming up. Something is showing up in my body. I don't know what it is. And then in December, during Christmas period, we got better. And then in the beginning of January, I got COVID, the Omicron virus. And that was not good. So that, for me, it took 7 days. And then when I was tested negative, I realized post-COVID was also as terrible. Nobody kind of talks about that. So I had to Google that and find out that post-COVID is horrible. For those of us who got COVID, I think you can relate to this. And because my immune system was compromised, and I found out that, my visa application was not approved because they were not confident of my qualification, because I didn't have a proper teaching qualification, but I have been teaching. So back in Singapore, when you're teaching drama freelance, you can do it. And after some time, of course, you are supervised, and then you get a certification. And some of us, with certain experience, we get away with it. But now it's a bit more strict. So I didn't have a proper teaching qualification, and I'm teaching English here. So to the government, I guess they were like, okay, he doesn't kind of seem to fit the profile. So why is he here? And then there was another thing that was like, okay, they were not so sure about Singapore. I guess they were not entirely certain whether, whether I'm here on any malicious intent or something. I don't know, all these narratives were playing in my mind, and it was quite mad. It was maddening, to say the least. I was like, when something goes wrong in my mind, the first thing that comes to my mind is the worst case scenario, and that I should leave and move on to the next place. Everything here is worthless. I am worthless. I'm not needed. I am not appreciated. All the worst narrative that could come just comes up. And I thought, okay, I got to check myself again now. I think I am facing a lot of visceral reaction to a new environment, to something that's being moved. And I talk about this with my best friends. We send videos, we video call, to kind of, you know, help me situate better, because it was not quite good. And they all suggest that I go to therapy. And I would, but it's just that, you know, financially I was not ready, and I was not kind of also in the mental state to surrender myself to somebody, as you know, everybody will see that it is, but I am not, and I would rather be ready for that to do it. So in lieu of going to a therapist, I started, you know, reading up a lot about self-therapy, what happens. You know, I was looking at YouTube videos, and that was also kind of where I came across Gaber Maté's works, and I started looking a lot at his videos and kind of just taking it all in. And the more I looked at his videos, the more I realized that, okay, what he's saying seems to make sense in a way that I know there was something that happened when I was younger, when I was a child, the environment that I was in, the coping mechanism that I have developed, that I have then become more cognizant of, the behavior that I have in my relationship with people, in my romantic relationship. You know, I was too afraid to commit. When something goes wrong, I just want to leave. I thought there was everything that was wrong with me, and I'm not worth it. I genuinely believe I was not worth being loved, you know. And there have been videos out there, if you can watch for yourself, you know, that talks about relearning that narrative in your mind. And so I was trying to relearn and reparent myself. I'll talk about reparenting in another video. I was trying to relearn and reparent myself. And then now with Gaber Maté's compassionate inquiry, and finding out, you know, a lot about what is actually coming up, the visceral reaction that happens, it makes sense. You know, it literally makes sense what was going on in me, what was being fed through my senses, and how my body then developed a certain narrative and coping mechanisms to get by through that, you know. And it's just, it just makes me feel tired. Like I was really exhausted, and I was trying different methods, by the way. I looked at you know, clearing your ancestral burden, looking at you know, self-therapizing, and the moment of time I just thought, okay, if everything is so natural for me, if I am acting this on first impulse, then it has to be something that was stored in my reptilian brain, which is my brain stem, you know. And then in the video that Gaber mentioned, the reptilian brain is something that mimics what reptiles do. You know, reptiles, when they're in danger, they tend to freeze. And if you can see, there are videos out there, you know, when a Komodo dragon was being attacked by a predator, or like a snake, before, you know, it feels threatened, or you know, a lizard when it wants to flee. You know, the reptilian brain is to shut down and to freeze and not do anything. And that's what I realized that I do. I was like, okay, I kind of see the similarity here. I do tend to freeze instead of fight or flight. When it gets too much, then I flight more than fight. So it's either I freeze and then I fly away, or like I just leave the situation. Like I said just now, I wanted to leave a lot. And part of the things that a reptilian brain likes to do is they like to cool off when things get really hard or really hot, you know, and they would submerge themselves in sand or in water because they're cold-blooded, and is letting the environment cool it for them. And I was like, okay, that is interesting. You know, not to say that I'm a reptile. I used to joke that, you know, I'm cold-blooded in the sense that whatever the situation would affect me, that's how I'm going to behave. And so, it's part of rectum brain is also a quick burst of energy when you need to kind of do it. So I realized that when I'm angry, I get really, really angry, really angry very, very fast. And then I would, just not realize it sometimes when I get in the fit of rage. And then after that, I get really exhausted and I just need to cool off from it. Like literally, I need to be in isolation, and I feel myself hot and I need to cool down. I need to be near a fan or wind or something, and I was like, okay, I'm not quite buying this, but it seems to make sense. And then he moved on into the mammalian brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. And, part of the function of the prefrontal cortex, which is the last part of the human brain to develop. One, it is to regulate bodily functions. So whatever happens inside. Two, it regulates attuned communication with others. So how I perceive a reaction, how I want to, how behaviors are being perceived by me, how I communicate to others. So I was like, okay, I know there's certain things that I need to rewire up there to make myself be better. So I didn't know whether it was the reptilian brain or the prefrontal. So now I know it is the prefrontal. And third, it is also responsible for emotional balance. So part of the other, therapy work that we've been watching, it's how do we get in tune, get in touch with our emotions. And it's a bit interesting, right? To use that phrase, to get in English at least, to be in touch with our emotions, to get in tune with our emotions. It's almost emotion, something that is tangible, that you can touch. And it's also intangible because you can be in tune with it. It's almost oral in that sense. Fourth, the prefrontal cortex also allow us for response flexibility. So in a sense that, again, when somebody is lashing out at me, I can recognize that and just go, that is not about me. And I can respond instead of react. Fifth, the prefrontal cortex also provides insight. Six, it provides empathy. And seventh, it modulates fear. 9 is about intuition, and intuition is about gut feeling. So I think you also might know that, our gut is, or our second brain, and having a gut feeling, this visceral reaction, informs the logical part of us, which is the brain, to kind of decide or not. And sometimes when we don't listen to our gut, the situation becomes worse. And then when we listen to our gut, it gets better. And lastly, morality. So these are some of the things that we know, like things like morality. And so I was like, okay, I'm buying into this argument. And he meets on and says, Damasio quotes saying, cognition is actually something that rests on the edifice of emotions, and that the basis of learning and cognition, or cognitive development, is our emotional being. So our emotional being is very much connected to our visceral being, our internal organs, our lungs, our stomach, our heart. So now, I mean, he champions, how emotions, body, mind, and even spirit is one. And he looks at traditional practices, beliefs, indigenous practices, even, like traditional, which now seems to kind of make sense, where if you want to treat somebody, it is not treating the symptom, which is what modern medicine does. It is treating the being, the whole body. And of course, back then, with not so much knowledge of medicine, it is about, getting your spiritual being in line, getting your psychological state more balanced, and it was interesting because the brain, according to Maté, is an organizational entity that brings and makes sense of information from inside and outside, but it actually takes more information from inside the body. So our ability to learn and take on external knowledge is very much influenced by our visceral state. And that was quite interesting for me also, because it informs me now that I need to take care of my internal being in a sense that I need to take care of my emotions. I need to be more attuned and be in touch of myself, which which is something that yoga helps, talk therapy, cognitive behavior therapy. It is something that is meant to help us regulate ourselves and regulate our emotions, and kind of get in tune with what's going on in there, so that it informs what's up here in the brain, and then it also informs the overall perception of the world that we have. Now, my question is, can we do it? Can we successfully rewire what we have learned in the brain? Because we know that the first 7 years of our lives is something that's important for the cognitive development. And as when we're a child, if we don't learn from a good environment, not being in a good environment, it's going to inform the rest of our lives, and then when we grow up, we have to reparent and kind of go back to that. So can we successfully rewire it completely, create a new narrative? Can we rewire the narrative, the prefrontal cortex of our brain? Can we heal our internal organs successfully, by ourselves? Because yes, we can take medications. Yes, we can go to therapy, but these are all external help. In the end, we have to make the choice ourselves, right? We have to act on it ourselves. We have to do it ourselves. There's no way that someone or something is going to make us do something unless we ourselves don't do it. So so I'm really curious to know how it is. I have been trying. I have been reteaching myself. I have been re-looking at my narratives, and I've been looking at myself in, with this trauma-informed lens. I'm trying to kind of also not look at trauma as a bad thing, because the other work that Gaber champions is the wisdom of trauma, and that trauma that happens in back then is actually teaching us a lot. And he also mentions how those things are ours. There's some things that those are the things that happen to us, so they are ours, and they provide wisdom of how we can move on. So we learn from the past, we look at it again in the present for hopefully a different future, so that it doesn't go in the arc that we have watched and learned. We can change the narrative and have a different ending for ourselves. And I tried that for myself, because like I said, I came from a certain environment growing up, and patterns of behavior that's come up. But until I met my partner, all these things didn't resurface. It happened when we were back in Singapore, and now that I've moved here, it just it comes up again, and it's been tiring for me, for sure, in trying to both relearn the past and also be present. And but it is a process. It's a process, and I have seen myself change. Like the quote I said yesterday, 6 months from now, you're going to be in a different space, mentally, financially, and spiritually. Keep working and believing in yourself. So that helped me move, that helped me make decisions to move here, to move out of my country, to be here. But it has also kind of had me face with all these things that are within me, and parts of me that I used to strongly dislike and hate. So I hated behavior and not hate myself. That's another thing I learned, is that I hate this behavior, and that behavior can change. But can it successfully change completely? Can I be in a completely different place? Some people have been successful with this. I think we have seen that, but not everybody is. I mean, I want to be the former. I want to be in a new place, to not be hostile to myself and the environment around me. I want to not just be too kind or be too nice and people pleasing. I want to learn boundaries that are healthy for me, but also healthy for the relationship that I'm going to have. So all these things I'm learning. And I'm just kind of, curious to know how it will be in the future. Has anybody else faced this before? If you have, write a comment below or send a comment to me if you're listening to this podcast. And, just let me know whether you have a similar story. All right, so that's all for today's episode, where I just wanted to kind of touch on that. Have a good day. If you're having a meal, have a nice meal, treat yourself to nice food, and see you in the next episode.